Hey, thanks, Justin. To the entire community, I just wanted to take this time to talk a little bit about the alerting on behalf policy that I signed late last year that we're planning to push out and promulgate over the next few weeks. Some of you on the call may have called into the Technical Support Services facility when you were encountering situations where your software may have had some challenges with getting a message out, or you may have had questions about the alerting process during an emergency. And so one of the things that we found is that, one, we were having tremendous difficulty in identifying or being able to validate the requester of an alert being sent out on their behalf. And so with that, we decided to put forward an alerting on behalf policy. And this morning, I just wanted to share with you a little bit about that and what some of the expectations are for you as a state, local, territorial, or tribal alerting authority. Here's the agenda that we'll follow this morning, and please feel free to ask questions either during the presentation or at the end. We recently established an alerting on behalf policy that provides guidance for IPAWS support in implementing one of the National Advisory Committee or Council's recommendations, and that was recommendation number 11, that the community put forward to the FEMA administrator. And that recommendation was that we establish a capability to alert on behalf of an alerting authority when they were experiencing some type of difficulty with issuing alerts during emergencies. And so the purpose of the alerting on behalf policy is to provide with, a redundant alert origination capability for alerting authorities to leverage. Some of you on the call today may have exercised that function here at the TSSF when you were experiencing either some difficulty with your alerting software and being able to get an alert out during an emergency, or when you just had some questions about an alert that you were planning to send and how that alert was going to traverse IPAWS and then appear on radio, television, or on wireless devices through the Wireless Emergency Alert System. It also allows the IPAWS Program Management Office to based on the alert escalation process that we'll talk about in just a second, to be able to verify the requester of that function to be performed on their behalf. In terms of background, we need this policy based on the actual experiences that I just described, so that, one, we can validate who's making the request, so that everyone along the way within your respective areas are aware that the request is being made, and that we can, verify or validate the source of that request. The current status, the policy will be implemented. The plan right now is to implement that on or about 16 October. And we are asking that alerting officials register to participate in scenario-based alerting on behalf tabletop exercises with the IPAWS TSSF. So why is the policy important? The ultimate goal of the AOB policy is to improve the effectiveness of alert warning and notification dissemination to ultimately respond to the needs of your communities when there is some threat that affects public safety. Through proper planning and laying out all of the procedures and protocols, we feel that this will enhance the readiness posture of our alerting authorities down at the local, state, territorial, or tribal level. It would help us to mitigate risk, and especially as it relates to a potential bad actor calling into the TSSF, requesting that a message be sent out to a community for which that was not authorized. And then it helps us to enhance or establish our internal processes and ensure that we're being responsive to your needs, certainly when emergencies occur. But not only then, when other situations arise in which you have a requirement to get a message out to inform your communities about various activities that are ongoing. So who is affected by the AOB policy? Certainly all of our alerting authorities at the state, local, territorial, and tribal level. And that speaks specifically to those alerting authorities or those entities that have signed a memorandum of agreement with FEMA. Certainly, if we don't have the foundational documents in place that establishes a relationship between FEMA and our stakeholders, then that becomes a little bit of a challenge when it comes to our alerting on behalf of someone requesting that assistance. And then, of course, you have to have the root have signed, you have to have had, it's almost like saying, what had happened was, but at any rate, you have to have a rules of behavior statement acknowledging kind of the rules of behavior and how you would conduct yourself under as an IPAWS alerting authority, where you're leveraging these national capabilities for local purposes. The Technical Support Services facility, of course, is affected by this because they will have to, as they normally do, ensure that we have personnel on staff and at the ready to respond to your requests 24/7. They also have to have the capabilities in place to fully support the requests that you may make of them, not only for technical assistance, but the tools in place to support the alerting on behalf functions. Next slide. So what is changing or required? In order for FEMA to alert on behalf of on behalf of an alerting authority, you must have the following things in place. We're asking that the states, the territories, and our tribal partners identify a 24/7 point of contact who is authorized to verify requests that are being made. Certainly, in the case of the states, when a local entity, whether it be a city, a municipality, or a county makes a request to FEMA, we're going to ask that the states be involved in that process, not only for their situational awareness, but so that they can verify that the requester of that support is who they are, say they are, and that they have the authority that is authority to alert to the geographic region for which they're requesting that support. And then secondly, to establish an alert escalation process within your respective areas. So for states, we're asking that the states and the counties work together to establish an alert escalation process where if the county cannot execute that function, certainly we would hope that, counties, or recommend that counties establish relationships or those supporting functions with maybe neighboring counties who can alert on their behalf, and certainly we can support that function by making the setting up the IPAWS system to allow neighboring counties and others to alert on behalf of a neighboring county. Not repeating myself here. And then secondly, if those relationships are not established, then we would expect the county or anyone else to go directly to the state. If the state is not able to support that function, then of course you can make that request of FEMA IPAWS to alert on your behalf. In the case of to our tribal nations, certainly that's a direct call into FEMA, but we would also recommend that where possible, our tribal partners work with the states, certainly for those ones that have those tribal nations that kind of span multiple states and multiple counties. If you can establish those relationships there to provide support when you may be having some challenges, that would be recommended as well. But certainly for our tribal partners, there's the opportunity to come direct into FEMA, but we would also request that you identify a 24/7 POC that can verify the identity of the requester. From the Technical Support Services facility perspective, they will attempt to determine the validity of the request by authenticating the caller. And with that, not only should we have the requester on the call, but that 24/7 POC that has been identified by the state. The TSSF will also record all incoming calls, and certainly they will comply with all of the federal wiretap laws, and then they will ensure that your alert or your warning governance structure has been followed before they escalate that up to the IPAWS PMO for the approval to issue that alert on your behalf. So here's the process. The TSSF and our staff can only alert on behalf when a state, territorial, or tribal 24/7 POC contacts the TSSF to begin the process. So the process will be starting on the alerting authority side of this slide. If you're unable to issue an alert in response to some potential threat to public safety, you will initiate that call to the TSSF, and we will, of course, work with you to ensure that alert escalation process within your respective areas have been followed. and that your 24/7 point of contact is on the line to verify the identity of the requester. Once we have validated that information, we will, on the TSSF side, get things moving with confirming the requester and working with the 24/7 POC. The TSSF will then pull the IPAWS PMO into a Teams call or a Zoom call to be able to communicate to the PMO what the request is and what we're being asked to do. And then, of course, the PMO, once all of the information has been validated and we have the needed information from the alerting authority that they would like sent and to what downstream dissemination systems, we will craft the message, go through the review with those who are on the call, and then ensure that we have checked again, and then triple checked to make sure that that message is going to the geographic area that it's intended for, as well as that it contains the information in the message that you're requesting be sent to your communities. So identifying a 24/7 POC, as I mentioned before, we would recommend, it is highly recommended that on the state side that your local governments work with one another to establish kind of, I won't call them mutual aid agreements, but agreements where if a neighboring county or city within a county that has alerting authority, that you work with one another to establish those relationships where if you're having some difficulty getting a warning out, you can have one of your neighboring counties or city alert for a county or county-to-county relationships to support the alerting process. In the event that a county or even your neighboring counties are unable to execute that function, we would ask that the state, that you escalate that request up to the state. And certainly if the state is unable to support that request, then of course with your 24/7 POC that will have been identified, you can call the IPAWS TSSF and we will start the alerting on behalf process on our side to validate the requester, craft the message, ensure that the content is what has been requested to be sent out, and then, craft things so that they are transmitted over or communicated over those downstream communication systems that you intended the message to go over. For our territorial and tribal partners, certainly you have the option of going direct into the IPAWS TSSF and the IPAWS Program Management Office, and we will support you as needed with alerting on your behalf if you're unable to do so. So the next steps, we are asking that our alerting authority partners identify that 24/7 POC, who will verify and validate the requests that are coming into the IPAWS TSSF and the Program Management Office. We are highly recommending that your state governments, as well as our territorial and tribal partners, establish and finalize their alert escalation process. And this is all, if you think about it in the context of continuity, you want to not only have an office or a person or a group of people who are responsible for executing this function, but you want to make sure that you have additional methods in place should the need arise to have that function performed when your primary point of contact or others are not able to execute that function on your behalf. And then, of course, we ask that you update your 24/7 POC information in the IPAWS user portal. And if you have questions about that, there are members of the team who are online to answer any questions or provide you assistance in that area as well. So next slide. Okay, with that, I am prepared to answer any questions that you may have. In fact, what you should see over the next week or two going out to your state directors is a letter from our Associate Administrator, Michael George, to them, informing them of alerting on behalf policy. And from there, we will be socializing this policy at NEMA next week. If all goes well with funding, we will be at NEMA socializing this and talking to state directors and others. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Hi, Antwane. I'll be facilitating some of the questions from chat. We have a couple questions. Casey and also Lucy asked, in testing, what was the total process time or how much of an increase in delay did AOB?
Right, so for testing or any type of tabletop exercises, call in, use the IPAWS TSSF number, that's 184 IPAWS Lab. and the team there will be at the ready to assist you with scheduling any type tabletop exercises or even live exercises that you may have in your respective communities.
In practice, though, how much time did this normally take?
Oh, in practice, how long should it take to execute the alerting on behalf function? Is that the question?
Yes, correct.
It should be if all of the precursor type activities or things are in place, the policies and procedures at the state, local, territorial, and tribal level, if those things are in place, it should only be a matter of minutes to be able to execute that function. We have seen from previous requests prior to the policy being established that it's taken minutes to get that done. As long as we have all of the parties online and actively engaged and the verification or validation of that requester can be done, then we'll execute that function pretty quickly. Our TSSF staff are online 24/7. So when you call into this facility, you're not going to receive an answering machine. You're going to receive a live voice on the other end, a person who is properly trained to execute those functions. And so it should go pretty quickly as long as all of the other kind of things have been done and all of the parties are online. We can go ahead and execute that function pretty quickly.
We got another question from another attendee asking, why can you only work with the state if the local alerting authority is the one requesting assistance?
Could you repeat that?
Why can you only work with the state if the local authority is the one requesting assistance?
Right. So one of the challenges that we've had, thank you for the question. One of the challenges that we have had, which kind of drove the need for the policy being established to begin with, is that we could not always verify the requester of that support function, right? So there are some 1,800 alerting authorities out there. Oftentimes we find ourselves challenged with being able to verify the requester for that support, which is why we're asking that there be someone at the state level, typically whoever signs your memorandum of agreement at the state level for access to IPAWS services. We're asking someone at that level, and if not at that level, that the state identified that 24/7 POC that can be contacted to verify the identity of the requester.
One question from Brenna at Clackamas County. Is this guidance going to be shared with alerting agencies in written format, including the state POC and their contact information and the workflow?
Right. So all of the information, that is provided to us at the state, from our state POC and from you, typically through the IPAWS user portal, that information will be shared within. We're hopeful that the state will share it with all of the alerting authorities within the state, but certainly we'll make sure that everybody is aware of the alerting on behalf policy, and we will certainly work with the states and our tribal and territorial partners on the alert escalation process to help you refine those procedures and those policies as they're established within your communities. So we'll make sure that this is properly socialized and that everyone is aware of kind of the procedures, the protocols, and the other type support functions that need to be supported. Yes, we will share that.
I believe that's all the time we have for questions. I'm going to hand it over to Justin. Thank you so much for joining us, Antwane.
Yeah, I saw couple of other questions, and the answer is yes. For local users down at the the local level, others who have access to IPAWS, you should all have access to the IPAWS user portal. If you don't have access, please feel free to call or to reach out to Al Kenyon or send a message into the IPAWS email box, and the team will respond to that and walk you through the process for establishing your account in the IPAWS user portal.